Welcome back to Total Freedom Radio with Rena Lynn, the show that's all about raising the bar of knowledge, healing hurting people, and spiritual warfare. If you're on YouTube, Rumble, or Brighteon, hit that like, share, and subscribe button and share this program with others. Maybe leave a comment for me. Then jump on over to arenalynn.com and check out my new book series called Prepare for the End, and just click on a title and it'll take you straight to Amazon.com where you can get a paperback or an ebook. Leave a great review so others will know that you like it. And if you don't, drop me an email and tell me why and let's talk about it. AskRenaLynn@yahoo.com. Drop me an email too if you've got a story to tell or a great job you'd like to share with me. I'll send you a form to fill out for exactly what I need. All the characters in the books need jobs, and I just love to get it right, and that's hard to do without inside knowledge. All right, let's get back to what we've been studying. Tonight we have part 4 of Ancient Paganism. We're going to start talking about the religion of the fallen angels. All through Scripture, God tells us to not do what the pagans do, and we're told to not follow the heretics and the false teachers. So, just what exactly were they doing that got them in so much trouble? In the beginning, Lucifer's plan was to create varying kinds of paganism. Believers who refused to convert would be offered a form of paganism rising up from within the true religion. Paganism absorbed the majority of the believers when they were lulled into a false religion that looked very much like the real thing that they were already used to. Next, a destructive war annihilated most of the few that still held to the truth. Finally, through a root of bitterness, the rest became just like the Canaanites. In the last lesson, we learned that Lucifer's lie was that the Creator God was fading away and people and angels would become gods in his place. This lie became the basis for the pre flood false religion and all the pagan religions that came after the flood. The following quotes from the Bible, early church fathers, and the ancient history books of the Jews give us a glimpse of what pre flood paganism actually was. Now, remember, when I say early church fathers, I'm talking about the disciples of Jesus' disciples and their disciples. After that, it kind of got a little corrupted. For these, we can put together 13 points that paint a clear picture of what the great lie consisted of and how it destroyed the ancient world. Now, I have an idea that possibly this thing that we have, this where the number 13 is something bad and bad karma. What's the word I'm looking for? It's not a good number. Anyway, I kind of think it goes all the way back to this. The Apostle Paul wrote that the pre flood world knew God's truth. They understood that God was completely separate from his creation. They also knew his power and Godhead were eternal. There would never be any other gods. All of nature showed them that Lucifer's doctrine of emanations was a lie. They deliberately rejected the true knowledge of God and willingly accepted Lucifer's lie. They began to believe that their ancestors were evolving into gods and they began making idols. Now, please catch this. They weren't fooled. Satan didn't dupe them. Says here they knew God's truth and they deliberately rejected it and willingly accepted Lucifer's lie. All right, let's talk about this ancestor worship. Romans 1:20 through 23 says, "For the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and godhood, so that they are without excuse, because that when they knew God, they glorified him not as God. Neither were they thankful, but became vain in their imaginations, and their foolish heart was darkened. Professing themselves to be wise, they became fools, and changed the glory of the uncorruptible God into an image made like to corruptible men, and to birds, and four-footed beasts, and creeping things." Now, the first point that each person is they made their own individual idol for their own home. Having idols proves that they were not atheists. Atheist believes in no God of any type. We'll see that each idol was different because each person was actually worshiping their own ancestor. If they worshiped their ancestors, they must have believed their ancestors and eventually they too would evolve into gods. After all, this was Lucifer's lie in the garden, remember? And we'll talk about what this looked like in a later chapter. All right, Jasher in chapter 2, verse 4 and 5 says, "And the sons of men went, and they served other gods, and they forgot the Lord who had created them in the earth. And in those days the sons of men made images of brass and iron, wood and stone, and they bowed down and served them. Every man made his god, and they bowed down to them. And the sons of men forsook the Lord all the days of Enosh and his children." Now, they took this to a new level. The Sumerians thought by many Christians but to be representatives of the pre-flood world worshipped a goddess that they referred to as Ninti. Ninti is usually translated as Lady of Life, but the literal translation is Lady of the Rib. And we're talking Eve here. And we get this knowledge from the Dictionary of Deities and Demons in the Bible, page 316. This is just one more example of pre flood peoples worshiping their ancestors, including Adam and Eve. Now, the concept here is that we're all evolving into gods, but the further you are down that path, the more knowledge that you have. So if they could contact an ancestor who had gone on before them, they could shortcut their path by basically cheating and getting information from someone who's already down the path. And Eve would be the furthest down that path. So she was the number one person that they worshiped as the mother. Satan tempted Eve by saying that she could become just like God. In pre flood paganism, Satan told people they could become gods themselves. First century magicians thought after death they would become daemons or helper spirits, like elves or angels. Catch that. But we learned through Church Father Tertullian in the original pre flood idolatry, people believed after death they were supposed to become a god. And here's what he said in his treatise on the soul. In this way, even by magic, which is indeed only a second idolatry, wherein they pretend that after death they become demons, just as they were supposed in the first and literal idolatry to become gods. So again, this magic was a way to shortcut becoming a god. Contacting your ancestor was a way to shortcut becoming a god. So that's why they did it. Genesis 3:5 says, God knows that your eyes will be opened when you eat it. You'll become just like God, knowing everything, both good and evil. And of course, we know this is the lie of the serpent in the Garden of Eden to Eve, the Nakash, if you will. All right. The third point, the original creator God no longer exists. Now, this is the crux of Lucifer's lie, and we've gone over it before, but I'm going to take it a little bit deeper. They taught that the creator God no longer exists because the original creative force or God emptied itself into creation and no longer existed. Okay, remember when I talked about they thought that the original God consumed himself into creation, and as creation grew, he diminished. So that's the crux of Lucifer's lie, the doctrine of emanations. Jasher 6, verse 18 through 19 says, "And they called to Noah, saying, Open for us that we may come to thee in the ark. And wherefore shall we die? And Noah with a loud voice answered them from the dark, saying, Have you not all rebelled against the Lord and said that he does not exist?" And here's some of the concepts. We know this as pantheism also. You're the universe expressing itself as a human for a little while. The doctrine of emanations is this idea of reincarnation, that you are dispersed out into the whole of this universe, this primordial soup, if you will. You come up like a bubble on a pot of soup, and you're there for a little while, and then you burst and go back down into the hole. And then later you'll come back up as another bubble or another person. So get this idea in your mind. The um, Pantheism is seeing the natural world as divine. It's a very different thing from seeing a divine God present in all things. Again, these people are idolaters, not atheists. They believe that the original God ceased to exist, or at least was greatly diminished and would soon disappear for all eternity. The fourth point is there's no need for salvation. Now, this is Oprah Winfrey's gospel. Any kind of salvation would have to be done by their own strength. All will make it to godhood on their own eventually. Magic just speeds up the process, and so this also included that there was no hell. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in the Middle Ages. All right, point 4. Again, salvation is not needed. In Genesis 6:5, the Lord saw how great man's wickedness on the earth had become, and that every inclination of the thought of his heart was only evil all the time. Josephus adds this: they were despisers of all that was good on account of the confidence they had in their own strength. They didn't need God's rules, they were enough by themselves. Point 5 and 6 are that they used a form of astrology that centered on predicting omens like eclipses in the sun and the moon, and they charted their courses through the zodiac. Now, this was practiced again as a means to summon the magic energies for rituals and to contact their ancestor gods at the appropriate time. We'll break this down more later, but let me give you an idea on it. The fallen angels that had been put as watchers on the earth to take care of God's people instead put themselves out that they were the gods, and they usurped the worship that belonged to God to themselves. But they weren't God. So all these people contacting them, needing help, wanting answers for things, it got a little annoying. So they basically created certain days of the year. They were only the only days they were allowed to contact with them. So they had to know these things. How do you figure out which day you contact your God and it's okay? And we'll get to that down the road. Jubilees 8, verses 1 through 5 says, and Canaan grew, and his father taught him writing, and he went to seek for himself a place where he might seize for himself a city. And he found a writing which former generations had carved on the rock, and he read what was thereon, and he transcribed it, and sinned owning to it. For it contained the teaching of the watchers, in accordance with which they used to observe the omens of the sun and the moon and the stars, in all the signs of heaven. And he wrote it down and said nothing regarding it. He was afraid to speak to Noah about it, lest he should be angry with him on account of it. This is one of those kingdom principles I'm always talking about. So, which bucket does it goes in? We know from history, from the Word of God, from lots of sources, that God's people are builders. They're creators. They do good for the world. They build hospitals. They build orphanages. They build. Um, a lot of the great colleges were built to educate God's men. But the kingdom of the enemy, they do it differently. Canaan didn't go out to build a city. He didn't go out to find a place to live. He went out to seize for himself a city. Now that gives you the idea that somebody else had built this city, belonged to somebody else, and people already lived there. But he went to seize it. Okay. Then he found a rock, a pillar, if you will, where the people before the flood that was worshiping the fallen angels had carved in the instructions on how to find them, how to reach them, and how to worship them. And he knew what it was because his fathers and grandfathers had to have talked about this on the backside of the flood. And he knew about it because he knew enough to not speak to Noah. He was afraid lest he be angry with him on account of it. You think? So that's another kingdom principle. The people of the enemy hide what they're doing. They don't want to get in trouble. They don't want it to be known that they're doing something wrong, so they hide it. All right, number 7. They had no horoscopes. The pre flood astrology did not have the idea of a horoscope. The horoscope was invented after the flood by the Chaldeans. In the pre flood version, astrology was only used to predict the next scheduled date for magic rites and the next time one could contact a god or a goddess. The Hippolytus, in his work on heresies, says the horoscope was invented by the Chaldean astrologers, and that is in his book again on heresies. Let me stop for just a minute and acknowledge my sponsors. Got a new sponsor that I'm really excited about. If you'll go to my website, www.renalyn.com, and find this green and white emblem that says USDA Organic, click onto it. It's going to take you straight to the brighteonstore.com. And if you love healthy food and supplements, find this and go there. This is my affiliate link, and it'll take you straight to the store. This is the Health Ranger store, if you know who that is, Mike Adams, and all his products are tested. And it's where I get items myself. You can also find a link on my videos if you're watching them on Brighteon. But he has different salts, he has storable foods, he has organic whey powder, protein powder, um, chlorella tablets. I may not be saying that right. He has iodine, Himalayan pink salts. He just got all kinds of stuff. Just go down there and scroll down and look, and it's all non-GMO. He has kosher foods. He has gluten-free foods. He has Berkey filters and the um, replacement filters to go in, just all kinds of neat stuff. So find him and see what's going on there. And be sure and click in from my affiliate link, and a little bit will come back to this show to help keep us on the air and help me publish books. Also, go to RenaThatInsuranceChick.com and check out the array of products that I have. I have a life, health, and annuities license. I do college planning. I'm a certified college planner, and I can help you with some retirement ideas. Everybody needs life insurance. Everybody needs to know that their family's going to be protected if something happens with them. And folks, if you got kids going to college, we all know it's expensive, and I'll show you how to get wholesale prices rather than retail. Right. Now let's get back to our discussion. All right. Point 8. This was invented by demons. The pre-flood magic system included astrology and was the inventions of demons, and we know this from Titian in his work to the Greeks. He said demons invented the concept of fate with astrology to enslave men and to worship them. So they didn't just invent it, they had a purpose. They wanted to enslave mankind so that they would be worshiped rather than God. Now, remember, the Old Testament says that what the pagans sacrifice to is demons. So we have biblical confirmation as well. Number 9, they had a ritual use of blood. They had blood sacrifices while they did magic. They had demonology, and ritual drinking of blood were all used by the post flood Canaanites as well. This ritual use of blood was also part of the pre flood religion. Now, all animal sacrifices involve blood, but they're always referred to as animal sacrifices. When a ritual just called for a blood sacrifice instead of an animal sacrifice, we know that it just means the use of blood, which means they didn't necessarily kill the animal. They just drained its blood or a portion of it. And because the blood was what was needed, not necessarily the sacrifice of the animal. And this is still going on today. In the 12th generation, when God had blessed men and they had begun to multiply, they received a commandment of this also, that the deluge had been sent. That's the flood. In the 14th generation, one of the cursed progeny, this is the Canaanites, they first erected an altar to demons for the purpose of magical arts and offered their blood sacrifice. Now we get this from the recognitions of Clement. Does it ever wonder to you why the demonic entities always want blood sacrifice? I remember in Leviticus, it's either 17:11 or 11:17. I never can remember, but it says the life is in the blood. Hmm. Sound familiar to our salvation concept? God knew this false religion would return after the flood, so he commanded Noah to ensure his children would not consume blood when eating meat. Do you ever just wonder when you're reading through the Old Testament and some of these commandments, where did that come from? Well, this is where it came from. In Genesis 9:3 and 4, it says, "Every moving thing that is alive shall be food for you. I give it all to you as I gave the green plant. Only you shall not eat flesh with its life, that is, its blood. The life is in the blood." All right, look at these 2 books. If you're looking on video and you're not listening on the radio, this is Douglas Hamp, and if you've not read or heard Douglas Hamp speak, I really highly encourage you to do so. His first book, Corrupting the Image, talks about how we're made in the image of God, what that means, what it looks like, and what the corruption did to us. It's an extremely good book. Corrupting the Image is as well. I have part 3, but I've not read it yet, and I'm thinking there might be a 4 out, but I really highly encourage you to go see Doug's work. Think you can get those on Amazon as well. Right? Number 10, they had evolution with reincarnation. Now, all pagan religions teach reincarnation with evolution. A pagan religion can't have one without the other. They just go together like salt and pepper, two sides of a coin. Likewise, the religions of Christians and Jews teach special creation along with resurrection. I've got a slide in another teaching that breaks those down side by side. I meant to stick in here and I don't think I did, but I'll try to do that in maybe the next teaching. These two can't be divorced either. If we can prove evolution will be part of the harlot church, we then know reincarnation will be too. The book of Revelation shows the end time church becomes part of the mystery Babylon religious system. Second, Peter's prophecy states that it begins by the church rejecting creation and Noah's flood in the favor of evolution. Now, isn't evolution taught in our schools right now and not the creation and Noah's flood? Has our society rejected that already? That's how Peter said it begins. This is taking place today in many of our church denominations as well. Now, all of these points that I'm just teaching you right now, I'm just telling you what they are. As our study progresses, I'll break down each one. It's like we came up with a tree trunk. We're dividing into those secondary trunks, and then we'll keep going smaller and smaller, breaking it down, giving you more and more information of what this means. 2 Peter 3:6, the verse I was referring, says, "There shall come in the last days scoffers, walking after their own lust, and saying, Where's the promise of his coming? For since the fathers fell asleep, all things continue as they were from the beginning of the creation. For this they willingly are ignorant of that by the word of God the heavens were of old, and the earth standing out of the water and in the water, whereby the world that then was, being overflowed with water, perished." So, in other words, what he's saying here is basically, and I've had people do this to me. You may have had them do it to you. Oh, come on. Surely you don't believe that. It's always gone on. It's been this way from the beginning. What makes you think it's going to end? Well, it ended once, didn't it? Revelation 17:3 and 5 says, I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast. This title was written on her forehead: Mystery Babylon the Great, Mother of Prostitutes and of the Abominations of the Earth. The belief that each person was evolving into a higher life form was part of the pre flood religion. Post flood paganism added the doctrine of transmigration of souls, which means if your karma or your lifestyle is bad, instead of evolving into a higher life form, which means you're closer now to being God, then you may devolve and come back as a lower form of life. The doctrine of karma was not part of the original paganism. That makes sense because Lucifer wanted everyone to believe that there's no hell and that we're all okay. So you can only go forward. So we'll see this again in the post flood histories and we'll break down why they added it. All right. Lactantius, in his Divine Institutes, says this: But I cannot here omit that which some erring philosophers say, that men and the other animals arose from the earth without any author. What he's saying here is, I just can't believe that this just happened without somebody creating it. Irenaeus, in his Against Heresy, says Plato, that ancient Athenian, who also was the first to introduce this opinion, this doctrine of the migration of souls. So we know it comes from Plato. Now, who is taught in our colleges? Who's taught in our high schools? It's not Noah. It's not the books of Moses. It is Plato. So see where this all is going. All right. Number 12, we're going to talk about ghosts, demons, and nature spirits. Now, these were taught to be the life force in all of creation because remember, the original God in pagan theology has dissipated out, diminished, and gone into the creation. So the God spirit, the force, if you look at Star Wars, may the force be with you, they're talking about this energy, this God that is now dispersed throughout creation. This is connected again to pantheism. If at death our spirits would evolve into a god, then the worship of demons and ghosts would be prominent. Notice their idols were not just demons and nature spirits, but also called phantoms. And phantom is just a Greek word for a ghost. All right, you who serve stones, and ye who make images of gold, silver, and wood, and stones and clay, and serve phantoms and demons and spirits. He's talking to the pagans, and this was Tertullian in his book on idolatry. Now, we're not going to get to the 13th point It's pretty large, and I can't get it all in the time that I need for a radio show, so we're gonna go into that next time, but I'm going to give you a warning. I'm pretty sure that one's gonna be bumped off of YouTube, so you're probably gonna have to find it on Brighteon or on Rumble, and on Rumble, you'll have to look for Rena Lynn because I put the name in the wrong box and the total freedom in the wrong box, and once you do it, you're in it. So, folks, I appreciate the time that you give me to come in and listen to this teaching. It's great teaching. Dr. Ken Johnson has wonderful books, and I highly, highly advise you to go to Amazon and look for Ken Johnson books and just, I always buy them 3 or 4 at a time because they ship free. And there's not a book that I've ever got from him that I didn't get edified and I didn't raise my bar of knowledge. And it was so easy to understand. And he has graciously allowed me to use his material to drop into these PowerPoints to teach for years. Recently, as you learned in part one, I got his permission again by email just before I got on to doing this to put out everywhere because I wanted to have that permission in place so that you would know I'm not just usurping his work. So join me next time for part five, and we'll start with point 13, and then I'll wrap it up and summarize each one, and then we'll go forth. Thank you.